And we are live with episode 17 of A Podcast for All Seasons. This is our kind of in the middle of / post San Diego Comic-Con 2014 episode. It's Sunday, so there's still a couple things going on at the con, but not really expected that we're going to get any huge announcements of any type. Marvel and DC are pretty much done with most of their major stuff. We're just probably going to get some ancillary stuff from here on out. But I'm going to turn it over to Eric, and he's going to give us a rundown of what we're going to cover today. Eric, what's going on?
Hi, Josh, and hi to everybody listening. This is Eric Joseph of DarkKnightNews.com, ComicBookMovie.com, Multiverse Entertainment. As Josh said, we're going to discuss the bigger points of news to come out of San Diego Comic-Con this week, and should anything decently big be announced on Sunday, yes, we're recording this on Sunday, July 27th. We will get to it in our next episode. But the first thing we'd like to talk about today, obviously the story that stole Comic-Con and all they had to do it with was a picture and, 20 seconds of footage? Yeah, everyone is talking about the reveal of Wonder Woman's costume and the teaser footage of Batman vs. Superman, which was online for a bit. It might not be now if you haven't seen it. Sorry, it was awesome. But first, I'll paint the picture for you. They started off the Warner Brothers Pictures panel, and Zack Snyder brought out Henry Cavill, and then they put the Superman photo that was revealed, I believe, by USA Today a few weeks back, and Cavill came out. Then he brought out Ben Affleck, and they put up a picture of Batman. It's a new one. No one's really talking as much about it. If you remember the headshot that came out a few days ago online, which I posted up on Dark Knight News, and actually I believe we were the first website other than DCComics.com to post it. It looked like a full body shot from the picture that headshot was used from. I certainly hope a high-res image of that shows up online very soon. And then he said, I have one more to bring out, and Gal Gadot came out, and then we got our first picture as Wonder Woman, of her as Wonder Woman, and then I believe about the same time they dropped the photo on Snyder's Twitter page, so we did get the high-res shot, and I personally, I really like the costume. Of course, you're always going to have people bitching about it, which happens with anything. I know it's cool to be angry on the internet. People said the colors were a little muted, and I think that's somewhat the way the tone of the photo was. Granted, the skirt might be a darker blue or red. It looked like they went with gold instead of the silver trim that they use in the new 52. But yeah, it's more of a warrior type skirt. She definitely has a strong regal bearing. There's still going to be people that complain about her, but I don't think she looked too skinny in the photo. I think she did look like a strong warrior woman. She's obviously very beautiful as well, and of course I was neutral to her at Wonder Woman at first, getting a little tongue-tied on today's episode, because she hadn't really been in much we're familiar with, but seeing her as the character, and eventually, we'll see trailers with her, I'm having more faith in her. Of course, I had more faith in Affleck off the bat, and if you saw the three of them standing next to each other at Comic-Con, we all know how massive of a guy Henry Cavill is. Affleck was even bigger. This is going to be one bulky Batman, but I think more than any actor, Ben Affleck looks more like Batman straight out of the comics than anybody. And then it certainly helps when sorry, Josh just put up a picture of Wonder Woman, and it distracted me momentarily, losing my train of thought. But
had to do it.
It's going to be
awesome shot.
Going to be attached to this episode. It's the first time we've done that on the show, so I think it'll show up in our finished product. As I've said, Affleck's just a huge guy. His costume looks straight out of the comics, an amalgam of the New 52 and Frank Miller Dark Knight suits. And then the teaser footage they showed. I have been waiting for this team up in live action my entire life, and I'm not lying. I didn't cry, but my eyes actually welled up with tears. It's finally happening, and granted they're teasing a fight between these two, which we expected earlier in the film, of course, before they, make up and become best buddies. But yeah, it's Batman on a rainy rooftop next to the bat signal, and he, no shit, is in the full-on armor from the end of the Dark Knight Returns comic book, and if you've seen the animated movie, which was very faithful, yeah, it's pretty much that exact same armor. And then Superman shows up. His eyes are glowing red with the heat vision. He's not looking too happy. I wonder what it is exactly that's going to want to make these two come to fisticuffs at first. But yeah, this is definitely the story that stole Comic-Con. Hell, last year they stole Comic-Con with just the announcement of this and a placeholder logo, because we didn't get the official logo until, a month or two ago. But the thing that surprised me is they didn't announce any other DC films to come. I thought at the very least we would get the announcement on the Shazam movie, but we could very well get that official word before the year is over. The Rock has been really hinting at it on Twitter lately, but I'm guessing there might be some things getting in the way of the official announcement, because he also said that the movie he's working on has 2 or 3 scripts that they're narrowing down. So I think they probably don't want to say, hey, the Shazam film's coming, until they can say what writer they went with 100% for sure, which makes sense. Who knows, they might not even have a director locked in yet, but although I think The Rock's a better fit for Black Adam, I think he's more marketable as Shazam, because he's very popular as an actor and wrestler, and it will get people in cinemas to get behind him as a superhero. I think he'll have the charm and charisma to play Shazam. And even though they said Shazam wouldn't tie into Justice League, Shazam has been in the New 52 Justice League recently. He's in the recent animated movies. I think just to change it up, even though he's very comparable to Superman power-wise, just to get another recognizable face in there and to have a little more star power, I don't see any reason not to put Shazam in the Cinematic Justice League with the likes of Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Cyborg, and Aquaman, the ones we likely know to be in it. And I also really thought we would get the announcement for Sandman, but Neil Gaiman did say in Comic-Con, and this wasn't really picked up by anyone else other than, I believe, Bleeding Cool, that a Sandman film is in pre-production. We know Joseph Gordon-Levitt's attached to produce, and I would say he's likely to star in it. Of course, the other big story to come out of this is Nikki Fink's scoop, which we talked about, I believe, in episode 14, of what she said was going to be the announced film slate up through 2018 for DC movies. Did not happen. And we said maybe not all of these movies would be announced, but she said no, this was Warner Brothers' big announcement for San Diego Comic-Con, and it did not happen. I kind of think she's been had. Apparently she had some Ghostbusters 3 scoop before, and she actually fessed up to that. Yeah, she ended up reporting based on false information, and I'm guessing this is what happened yet again. But since we have a lot to talk about, I've basically said my bit about Batman versus Superman, DC on film. What would you like to say about yesterday's developments, Josh?
Well, first things first, the Wonder Woman pick. Yeah, I tried to share it, and I'm not sure if it's going to show up in the live feed. I think that's only if we're doing video. You can check out. We're going to link all of the photos and whatnot, the pertinent stuff. We might even link uh, in the actual link for this video that Eric's going to do on Multiverse Entertainment. We'll have to try to link. There's one or two videos out there that haven't been taken down of the footage, the teaser footage, and then obviously we can put up some pics of the whole Trinity. We can put up the Batman pic, we can put up the Wonder Woman pic, and the Superman pic if you guys haven't already seen them. But it's an awesome suit. I have read, people saying apparently, Marvel only Marvel, geez, oh Pete. Warner Brothers or Zack Snyder only wants to use black. He only wants to use dark, muted tones and things like that. And it's the color of the photo. It's the scheme color of the photo in and of itself. It is not a pure like dark brown leather suit. It's gold on red, and then it's very possible that the bottom skirt part on her suit is maybe a very dark, muted blue. I don't know that that's the case, but if you really inspect like the high-res photo that's been released, you can get an idea of what it is. But it's a fantastic-looking costume. Aside from the fact that she's not wearing the Star-Spangled Briefs, from the litany of Wonder Woman things, which eventually she had a skirt originally, and then that became briefs eventually, as we became less prudish as a society. But they don't have the stars on it. But she's a foreigner. She doesn't start off as like the Star-Spangled American hero that she becomes, I would imagine, and so it makes sense. She decides to come to the man's world out of Themyscira, and then decides to come to America. Hell, why not? Because Batman and Superman are there. Apparently that's where things are happening. And, decides to adopt a blue skirt or a blue briefs eventually. Who knows? But anyone who's complaining is complaining for the sake of complaining, is for lack of a better word. I know that some people, some ladies have complained about high heels on the thing, that being impractical. Sure, I'm sure that they are impractical, but she's been wearing them in the comic books for, like 30, 40 years, so I guess we can get away with it in the comic books. We can get away with it in live action. I think it worked for the Watchmen movie as well. I believe that Silk Spectre had high heels as well, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's aesthetic. It doesn't have to be 100% practical, but people apparently don't seem to get that. It was a great shot.
Sorry to interject, but I think that for every one that complains about the costume, there are probably, 3 women that want to cosplay as this.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the next Comic-Con we don't have someone essentially cosplaying with this costume. I'm surprised I haven't seen anyone cosplaying as the Affleck Batman by this point. The costume's been out for a while. Some of those cosplayers are just insane, crazy with their skills and with how fast they just bust this stuff out. Obviously, a high-quality costume like that, you want to take your time with it, but. Enough about the comments about the costume. Yeah, check out the pics and all that. It'll be linked with the video. But it was an awesome reveal. It's the first time we've seen her in live action in a film, outside of the initial Wonder Woman TV series, which might have had a TV movie, I think. But cinematically, it's the first time we've seen her. It's the first time we've seen the Trinity all pictured together. They're all going to be in a film. It's a big historic thing, so it's very, very cool. As far as the teaser's trailer is concerned, it's just, it's very, very dark. It's very, very moody. But it's expected to be, at least to a point. I think that we know that Superman and Batman are going to fight. They're going to have to come to terms, and I guess we've answered the question of whether or not Batman and Superman are going to fight, and is Batman going to be able to contend with Superman? Well, how would he do that? Well, he puts on a gigantic effing mech suit, and that's how he does it. And maybe he can't go toe to toe with Superman, but he at least won't, die in a single punch. It's hopefully going to be a lot less Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. Hopefully they're more building from that thematically and maybe aesthetically than they are plot points. I really hope that's the case because it's one of my least favorite stories with Superman in it. Not to say it's my least favorite Batman story, but it's definitely not it's not in my top 5. And I think that it's a misrepresentation of both Batman and Superman. We've talked about that at length before, so I won't continue to harp on that. But they're obviously, this suit is almost identical to the mech suit from the Dark Knight Returns comic book by Frank Miller, and so that enough should be getting some geek boners going, because that's the Batman story for so many hardcore comic book nerds, and even people who don't care for DC have to admit that that's like this, it's the seminal work as far as something that really started to put comic books at the forefront of being able to allow adult, realistic storytelling, storytelling, comic books as a storytelling medium, for lack of a better way to put it. And they're pulling obviously from those visual elements. Without a doubt, the Batman suit, like Eric said, it's kind of a mishmash of the Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns suit and maybe a little bit of a New 52 thrown in there. And the mech suit is almost a replication of the shots on in the comic book. So it's pretty interesting that they're gonna be that accurate. I mean, I know that when they first introduced it at 2013 Comic-Con, and they had Harry Lennox read quotes from the comic book, Bruce, Clark, I want you to remember that I'm the one that beat you, and it's Bruce talking in monologue directly from the comic book, essentially that you were beaten by a man, but also that you were beaten by me, Batman, and I'm the goddamn Batman, that whole thing. It's one of those situations for me that, again, I don't think that, or rather I don't hope that they use that thematically too heavily, and especially in terms of plot points. It would not make for a very good Superman movie if they were pulling from that as far as plot's concerned. And maybe they could pull a few little plot threads here and there as fan service from there for Batman's story. I think that would be tolerable, but hopefully not too much. Again, I just don't think it's a great representation of Batman. He's more Batman, Frank Miller's, psychopath, often referred to as the goddamn Batman in comics nowadays. So the footage definitely got me so geeked and stoked. It's amazing. Batman pulls back the tarp off of the bat signal. He slams on the light. Electricity crackles in the rain. It's very, very, even noirish in a way, and it's extraordinarily dark, visually dark as well as tonally dark, and then bam, right in the middle of the bat signal in the sky, all of a sudden Superman's dead center, looking down on Batman in mech suit with lit up eyes, and Superman's like, oh yeah, I can do that too, and then bam, flash the heat vision. It's a totally awesome scene. Everyone was cheering when you see the video of it. Everyone's just like, oh my god, I can't believe it. It's going to be completely awesome. If they fail in this film, it will be one of the greatest failures that has ever been failed. It will be the most epic of fails, as it were. So I'll finish on that note, but it got everyone excited, and the internet is just friggin' blowing up about that. Everyone's talking about Wonder Woman's costume and the footage of Batman in the mech suit, and more than our next topic, which Eric, I'll let you get into.
All right, of course, we have to talk about the other big announcements last night, which, of course, the Marvel Cinematic Universe later on in the day in Hall H. Avengers: Age of Ultron, obviously the biggest focus there, sequel to the highest grossing superhero movie as of now. Uh, I believe they brought out a decent portion of the cast, and Josh Brolin came out wearing a plastic Infinity Gauntlet. Of course, he is Thanos in the Marvel films going forward. I believe he debuts for sure in Guardians of the Galaxy. Maybe they'll have a little bit of a teaser with him in Age of Ultron to, set up further films, and Avengers 3, which will likely be when Thanos is the ultimate villain. But they showed some teaser footage, which I don't believe has leaked, but it was much more of what you could call almost a trailer, or at least a clip reel. Comicbookresources.com does have a decent summary of it. That's where I read it, and I believe where Josh did as well. But just to sum it up, they're hanging out around Avengers Tower. We get to see the Avengers. They're really coming together as very good friends and not just people who fight alongside each other in the battlefield. And they're trying to lift Thor's hammer. Everyone's failing at it. Captain America gets it to kind of budge somewhat, which makes Thor get worried. And Black Widow doesn't even bother to try, and she says that none of you are worthy. And then kind of a mangled, almost proto Ultron, I guess, comes in and says, none of you are worthy, you're all killers. And then he goes into a little more monologue, and then they're attacked by some Ultron drones. And then I believe there was some footage of Iron Man and Hulk fighting. Iron Man's in the Hulkbuster armor from the comics. And it ends with, you see Captain America's shattered shield and Tony Stark looking down at dead Avengers. Maybe this is a dream sequence. Maybe they're somehow going to fix it with time travel. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But yeah, there's got to be some reason, because I wouldn't doubt it if an Avenger or two dies in this movie, but I don't see 90% of the team being wiped out, as it were. If Josh has the CBR article pulled up, maybe he can run down a little more specifics of the finer points, but we know the film, I don't think they've finished principal photography, but they're obviously much farther along than Batman vs. Superman, because it's coming out a full year ahead of Batman vs. Superman, so they were able to show off quite a bit of footage to the crowd in Hall H, and it looks to be a bit of a different type of film. They say it's going to go a bit darker than the first Avengers did, but I like that this one we're able to hit the ground running. The team has already been pulled together, so we don't have to see the origins of how the team came together anymore. And it might set the tone going forward of what we can expect from Phase 3. And speaking of Phase 3, there wasn't much news in the way of that. We got a little bit about Ant-Man. Evangeline Lilly was added as Hope Van Dyne, and someone else joined the cast. But, for all the people complaining about Batman vs. Superman, it doesn't seem there are as many vocal about Ant-Man. And granted, it's not a character I care about, but this film has gone through so much trouble that if you thought Green Lantern had too many cooks in the kitchen, and that's why that film didn't work as well as people wanted it to, Ant-Man seems to be that to the nth power, because we've already had a change in directors. We've had how many writers come through the door, and recently they brought in another two to do yet another rewrite, and shooting has now been pushed to August. Paul Rudd, who's the film's lead as Ant-Man, Scott Lang, I believe is the character's name, if he or Michael Douglas, who's playing an older Hank Pym, were to leave, yeah, they would be truly screwed. But yeah, Patrick Wilson and two other actors have left the movie, so what does that tell you? They showed off, I believe, some VFX footage because they don't have any real, film. They haven't shot any, actual dailies for. They've shown some concept footage. That's all well and great. Maybe it's going to work out for them, but I just have this feeling deep in my gut that Ant-Man's going to be a disaster. Now, Guardians of the Galaxy, which I've been a little suspicious of from the start because I wasn't warm to the theatrical trailers, but some of the TV spots have appealed to me more. I'm warming up to Guardians of the Galaxy. It's getting. I mean, I'm going to see it regardless and reserve my judgment. Maybe I will love Guardians. And I've said from the start that I didn't like the first trailer or two, but I'll be ready to eat my words. It's not a film I have no faith in. Guardians could be a very good time, and they certainly don't have anything previous to compare it to. We were talking before the show that the thing with Guardians, like Iron Man, is that people won't walk in with any preconceived notions. Like, they won't say, oh, Henry Cavill was no Christopher Reeve, but it's like Robert Downey Jr. set the tone for Iron Man, so people have gotten so attached to him. It's not like people are going to say, oh, Chris Pratt can't be Star-Lord because, only Burt Reynolds was my Star-Lord, or, Batista's Drax the Destroyer, Bob Balaban's the one true Drax the Destroyer for me. People aren't going to make these comparisons, so Guardians already has that in its favor, that other than, cartoons. Its own animated series is launching soon, but, they've made an appearance on Ultimate Spider-Man, but, the general public doesn't have any other Guardians to compare it to. And speaking of Guardians, that was the third point to come out of the Hall H presentation for Marvel Studios, was Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is already confirmed for, I believe, July 2017. Now, what surprised me is that this is the only film they've set a confirmed date for. Of course, they have dates confirmed all the way through to 2019, and the interesting thing is that Marvel Studios will have 3 films out in 2017 and 2018, possibly 2019, but they've only locked in one date so far for that year. I think it shows that they have a lot of faith in the movie, the first film, and maybe that is to get more asses in seats. It's like, whoa, they've already confirmed the sequel. It really must be good. I'm surprised that Doctor Strange has not been announced for 2016 yet. We still think that's a lock, but I think until they're ready to hash out a few more specifics, maybe announce who's playing Doctor Strange for sure. Joaquin Phoenix has been rumored. They have a director, but I think there's just maybe a few more things they want to work out. Maybe we'll hear it by New York Comic Con in October. It's just kind of surprising they've announced the July 2017 movie and not the July 2016 movie, because there's still 2 mystery films sandwiched between Captain America 3, which is May 2016, and then Guardians 2. And I still firmly believe that, as we said, Doctor Strange would be July 2016, and I really think Thor 3 will be the May 2017 movie. And before I turn it over to you, Josh, just one note about Marvel films. It's not a Marvel Studios project, but Sony Pictures announced on Wednesday, kind of ahead of the con, at least preview night was Wednesday, that The Amazing Spider-Man 3 has now been pushed from June 2016 to a not-so-concrete 2018 date. They haven't locked in a specific date. And Sinister Six is now locked in for November 2016. Kind of odd that the big spin-off is getting here before Amazing Spider-Man 3, but we know that one's probably farther along because Drew Goddard likely had to leave the Daredevil Netflix series to direct Sinister Six, and I imagine they probably have a script for it. And we know Amazing Spider-Man 3 is kind of back to the drawing board because Roberto Orci sorry, not totally sure how to properly pronounce his last name. He's off to direct Star Trek 3, and I believe he has some involvement in writing a Power Rangers film. So they've kind of got to put a little more focus on what to do with the script of Amazing Spider-Man 3. But I think it is quite a gap to put 4 years between Spider-Man films. We haven't seen this, well, if you're not counting the Sinister Six spinoff, this is the longest that there will be between Spider-Man films, between Spider-Man 3 and then the reboot of The Amazing Spider-Man 1. I think it was kind of wise on their part to do it Wednesday because they knew that Marvel Studios and then Warner Brothers' Batman vs. Superman announcement would completely overshadow Spider-Man on Saturday because, yes, Spider-Man is a huge pop culture icon, but his box office return is starting to wane. No, we already know what's on the slate for Fox, so they didn't have to make any announcements. So without further ado, I've given kind of my take on what Marvel's had to say. I've given you quite a mouthful of your 2 cents for Marvel Studios and Sony, but what's your take on what's going on with Marvel, Josh?
It was a pretty big announcement as far as well, not announcement so much, but the sizzle reel, as they like to call it, that got some pretty big fanfare. The Avengers 2 footage. The Ant-Man stuff is really up in the air. Like Eric said, they added 3 people to the cast: Evangeline Lilly from Lost and the Hobbit sequel, most recently, Desolation of Smaug.
2 people were added, 3 left.
I'm sorry, 2 people were added and 3 left. You're correct. I stand corrected. But 2 people were added, and 3 people leaving a film that is very closely coming up. That is a pretty surprising development, and with the other information about the script rewrites and things like that, that movie is very much in question in my mind, and it has been ever since it's been talked about. Far more than Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, I could see an ensemble sci-fi film working. You don't have to have an established. You don't have to have an established cast. You can play a lot on popular sci-fi tropes, and you can even play on semi-parody. We saw something similar to that in like Galaxy Quest. It's obviously that's a completely different film. It's a pure comedy in tone. But it proves that you can get invested in these characters very quickly, and you can make a very exciting adventure film. I think that J.J. Abrams had actually mentioned that Galaxy Quest was his favorite Star Trek film before he made his. That was kind of like a tongue-in-cheek joke, I'm certain, but it stands to reason that this can be a really awesome sci-fi film. So Guardians of the Galaxy hasn't been really in the back of my head as I really think this is going to be horrible. I wasn't blasted by the trailer like so many people were, but Ant-Man has always been this lingering doubt in the back of my mind. It's like he's not an extraordinarily popular character in Marvel's comics. I know that he's been around for a long time, and he's been a member of the Avengers, and obviously they want to make him his own man, his own big character. But with all of the problems uprising around it, it really makes me question how good that film's going to be. Eric's mentioned some of the stuff about other films that have, had similar, too many hands in the cookie jar, or too many chefs in the kitchen, as it were, and making a product really, really bad. I hope that that's not the case with Ant-Man, because I mean, who doesn't want more awesome comic book films, or just more awesome films in general? So hopefully that film turns out great, but I'm really concerned that it's going to end up being a little bit of a debacle and maybe one of their rare Marvel's rare misses. As far as the Avengers 2 footage, it sounded really, really cool. I mean, obviously a sizzle reel being what it is, it's meant to give us the awesomest stuff from the film. The problem with sizzle reels is that sometimes they give us the only awesome stuff from the films, and hopefully that's not the case. Obviously, it's a 2-some-hour film, so it's going to be pretty interesting. But yeah, I really like the way that it started off based on the descriptions. Again, there's no teaser up online that we found, at least not as of the time of posting this video. But you know, they all sit around in Avengers Tower. They're all in civilian, you know, clothes, and they kind of are joking around. And the first thing is that Hawkeye mentions the oath around the hammer. You know, if he be worthy, you shall have the powers of Thor, and they kind of joke around of what does that even mean. And Stark kind of sarcastically says, if I lift it, do I get to rule Asgard? You know, just classic sarcastic, you know, Robert Downey Jr. and whatnot. And of course, he doesn't move it, puts on the Iron Man gloves, still can't move it. Rhodey puts on the War Machine gloves, still can't move it. You know, Banner kind of tries to lift it and then fakes like he's getting angry the fact that he can't lift it. Everyone kind of freaks out in the Avengers. And then Steve Rogers grabs it. And if anyone should be able to lift it, it should be Steve Rogers. But he does manage to apparently budget a little bit, and apparently some concern shows on Thor's face. And Black Widow completely passes on the chance to do it, as Eric mentioned, and Thor mentions it's because you're not worthy. And then Ultron comes in the room and like this, you know, the quote is, you know, tattered metal robot skeleton that's apparently pieced together from other parts of Iron Man's costumes, Iron Man's other suits, giving us to the way that I don't know if it had been completely talked about before, but that Iron Man is he is to blame for Ultron coming into existence rather than.
I know all the specifics about that.
Had they mentioned it before? Well, you know, most people know that in the comic books, most people who read the comic books know that it was Hank Pym, the original Ant-Man, who created Ultron, and we knew that they were going to most likely change that up for the Avengers 2 film, but we didn't know. I didn't know rather at first that they were going to make it Iron Man. But so his robot skeleton is basically an amalgamation of different Iron Man outfits, and he says,
allow me to cut in for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to give people the background on the cinematic Ultron. Of course, he's not created by Hank Pym. Before Josh goes further with detailing the footage, I should at least put in that Ultron is a creation of Tony Stark. Apparently, he creates these Iron Man drones as a way to also help them patrol the Earth, to put a little bit of relief on the Avengers. And Ultron is an AI created by him. And Tony, of course, being the narcissist, implements it with its own personality. But Ultron decides to forego any of the morality or sympathy that the human Tony Stark would have, and he only embraces the cynical side. And it seems like Ultron kind of wants to save the Earth, but he might have the belief that in order to do that, all humanity must be destroyed. And it also seems that, you know, Jarvis, the Vision, this we don't know 100%. Well, we do know Vision, of course, will be Team Ultron in the beginning. You know, Jarvis, voiced by Paul Bettany, will now get a body, so it's a little bit of a divergence from the comics. But it kind of looks like maybe Ultron's going to try to enslave the AI that was Jarvis before Jarvis sides with Tony Stark and the Avengers. But I'll throw it back to you. Just wanted to let our listeners know a little bit about what to expect from Ultron. And, of course, he'll probably get an improved body like we saw on the cover of Entertainment Weekly. Of course, he's probably just cobbling together various Iron Man armor when we first see him.
They mentioned that at the end of the trailer. He basically looks up in the like the clean, you know, fresh new, you know, metal body, the final Ultron suit, and he says something along the lines of like, "I don't have any strings," which is a reference to there's a song playing in the background, which is supposed to be kind of a creepy version of "I've Got No Strings" from Pinocchio, which is, you know, Tony Stark's made his own boy, as it were, and this boy decided to kill the universe. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, we get, you know, Hulk and the Hulk versus Stark in the Hulkbuster armor. which is supposed to be pretty awesome. A lot of people were talking about that. Yeah, you see Cap's shield shattered in half, and there's just a lot. I mean, when they say sizzle reel, it definitely sounds like this was the hits from the film. I cannot wait to see that trailer finally online because it sounds awesome, as well as getting an official teaser, a high-def teaser of the Batman versus Superman one. But as far as the upcoming announcements, we mentioned at the very end of the last episode, I decided to mention something that had been tweeted by a normally reliable source or fairly reliable source, El Mayembe, from Latino Review, I believe, Latino News. He had mentioned something about possibly the death of the Sinister Six. Well, that's not happening. So, I mean, sometimes we would try to report on things that might not be 100% confirmed, aka the Fink story about some of DC's upcoming films. That story had a lot of credibility because it was being talked about in a lot of news sources as being mostly reliable. Maybe maybe DC decided to change up that announcement because it was quote unquote leaked, or like Eric thinks, maybe it's just none of it was 100% accurate. I guess we'll have to wait for time to tell completely on that one. Eric thinks that she's got egg on her face, that she definitely made some incorrect announcements. That could mean that some of those things are not true, some of the films that were announced, which were including not only a Shazam film, but what were some of the other ones, Eric? I can't remember the exact list. I know that there was obviously the Justice League film, and there was a few others, but it was one of those things where a super reliable source says, hey, these are the DC movies upcoming, and they're going to talk about it at San Diego Comic-Con, and they don't. Well, it could have been simply because they didn't actually want to give her credence for having spoiled it, but I'm not sure. She could have simply they could have simply been wrong. But we'll have to see and go from there. But the next topic we wanted to talk about was DC's upcoming slate of animated films. So they obviously have a huge and awesome animated film library that they constantly are making up. They mentioned a couple of other ones, Batman versus Robin, Justice League Gods and Monsters. Eric, you want to talk about those next?
Yeah, I'll just say about the whole Nikki Fink thing. Yeah, I mean, we know Shazam, Sandman. Well, of course, we know Justice League is going to happen, but Shazam and Sandman seem like locks. But it's just like the rest, like Flash, Green Lantern, Team Up. That's like one I question the validity of. But it's just if and when. Well, it's when some of these get here, but I do think that she was operating based on faulty information, and I don't think because she spoiled it that's why they didn't announce it, because I don't think that a journalist is going to deter a juggernaut studio. It doesn't seem likely to me. But anyway, moving on to the animated films. Of course, you may know on the show we also love the animated films. Me especially, because I collect all of them. At the Batman Assault on Arkham premiere, which, by the way, the Blu-ray and DVD of that will be available August 12th, they premiered it Friday night, and afterward they had a panel. There are still no transcripts of the panel, to my knowledge, online, but at least we know the announcements for the 2015 slate of films. We already knew Justice League Throne of Atlantis is coming early 2015. I'm guessing probably late January, early February, as recent history has been showing us. Throne of Atlantis, of course, based on the comic book of the same name. I'm not expecting as literal of a translation. They're bringing in Aquaman, giving him kind of an animated origin story. Of course, he's the big focus of the film. I do think it's going to be not totally like Justice League War, but Justice League War had a lot of close ties to its comic book counterpart, but new threads to explore. Of course, they had Shazam in it, but I I don't think it's going to be as loose of an adaptation as, say, Son of Batman was to its source material. I think it's going to be 50% to 75% comparable to Throne of Atlantis, the comic book. Um, Batman versus Robin, not to be confused with the Batman versus Robin Grant Morrison story. This will be based on Court of Owls, but considering that the film's not called Court of Owls, I think this will be another loose adaptation akin to Batman, I mean, Son of Batman. I almost said Batman and Son, which was the comic book arc that film had some inspiration from. A lot of people didn't like Son of Batman. I thought it was okay, maybe 7 out of 10. Josh, I believe, still yet to see it. But I wouldn't doubt if we see a mishmash of Batman versus Robin from Grant Morrison with Snyder and Capullo's Court of Owls, because this isn't really spoiling it for Josh or anyone who hasn't seen Son of Batman, but there was no mid or post-credit stinger in Son of Batman, but what you did see intercut throughout the credits were still shots of Nightwing and Damian fighting each other, and I thought that really pointed to the next New 52 Batman-type animated film would be Dick and Damian together as Batman and Robin. So maybe we're going to see Dick and Damian as Batman and Robin up against the Court of Owls instead of Bruce Wayne. And it's not 100% a bad idea, but I'm expecting this to have more originality to it and not as married to its source material. We'd have to see how it turns out, but at the same time, while I do have a lot of faith in the people at Warner Brothers Animation, because I love nearly everything they've done in the past quarter century, DC superhero-wise, I kind of think Court of Owls, being one of the most hailed Batman arcs of the past decade, and some are saying it's one of the best ever, I kind of think that it should have stuck closer to its material, like the Under the Red Hood movie, which certainly it did have some deviations from the comic book, but many people, including me, thought the movie was better than the comic book, and I think Court of Owls would be something like, Under the Red Hood, or, Year One and Dark Knight Returns were even closer adaptations of their comic book counterparts. I kind of think Court of Owls deserves to be something like that. That's not to say it will never happen. I just really, I'm not disappointed by the announcement by any means, but Court of Owls was a book that had atmosphere in spades. You could just feel the shadows of Gotham City as you were reading it, and I really would have liked to see a closer adaptation, and I'm starting to sound redundant, so I'll move to talking about the next film, Justice League Gods and Monsters, which we don't know anything what that's going to be, but it's written and directed by Bruce Timm, so that tells you it's probably going to be awesome. But I'll offer you some speculation on it since it's Bruce Timm. Now, in Throne of Atlantis, we're going to see returning actors like Jason O'Mara as Batman, Chris Gorham as the Flash, Sean Astin as Shazam, Shamar Moore as Cyborg. Nathan Fillion, who has previously voiced Green Lantern Hal Jordan, didn't do in Justice League War, but he's coming back to voice Hal in Throne of Atlantis. And then we're seeing Jerry O'Connell as Superman, which I didn't know. I don't know if Josh was privy to that information. Rosario Dawson is playing Wonder Woman for the first time. She has voiced Artemis before, but I think she brings a strong female presence, not presidency. I think she has the bearing for Wonder Woman, even just as the voice of the character. And Matt Lanter is voicing Aquaman for the film. But Gods and Monsters, since it's Bruce Timm, I can really see Kevin Conroy, maybe Tim Daly or George Newbern coming back as Superman, maybe Susan Eisenberg as Wonder Woman. I could see it being if it could very well be an in continuity continuation of Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, the Timverse as it was called. I'm not ruling that out. Or it could be a standalone film with those actors coming back, but Bruce Timm is a seal of quality in the world of superhero animation. He's animation, man. If any episode needed a second take for me, it's this one. But moving on, Bruce Timm he's just royalty when it comes to comic books adapted to animated film, or it could easily just be a completely original story. There were rumors that Timm was going to helm a new Justice League animated series, so maybe that was canned and this was kind of like the pilot, or maybe this is kind of a backdoor pilot to a new series. I can see, as I said, various directions of where this is going, but I do kind of see Kevin Conroy doing the voice in this film. And then, of course, we can't speculate what's coming in 2016. We have no idea. There are possibilities we're going to get stealth reveals for all ages titles, like how this past year we had the OK title, in my opinion. Some people liked it more, the JLA Adventures Trapped in Time. It looks like there's a direct-to-video Batman Unlimited animated movie on the way, which people have speculated Batman Unlimited, based off of the toy line, would be an animated series, but Legions of Gotham said they had it on good authority that it's an animated film, and I can see that being tied in, being a Target exclusive first, and then, being based on action figures. It doesn't mean it'd be a bad movie. I could see it being lighter in tone. I could maybe more akin to the Batman or even Brave and the Bold, but I know some of the designs, like if you've seen the Joker from that toy line, he's very muscular with his sleeves torn off with a grenade belt around his chest, but it could also be a wildly imaginative take on the Batman mythos, and could be very fun to watch. But I guess hopefully before the year's out, we'll have more news on Batman Unlimited. Not to get too sidetracked, but Josh, what's your level of excitement for these upcoming animated movies?
Yeah, Court of Owls is exceptional. It's one of the first gigantic stories to come out of the New 52, as far as being very critically successful. Is also, it was Batman title, so it was also lucrative. I think it was one of the #1 titles each month that it came out during its run. It's an awesome story. It's a little bit of a retcon to some of the Batman continuity, while at the same time, the fact that it is a retcon works with the story, because it's supposed to be kind of this thing has been happening in secret since essentially the dawn of Gotham is the concept that this Court of Owls exists, and so it's a very interesting story. I like takes like that. It almost had kind of, granted it didn't delve into straight magic, but it almost even had like an occultish feel. The secret societies is a really cool thing for me. I like that whole concept, and the fact that they've been around forever, that the owls, which are essentially the assassins, the Talons rather, the assassins of the Court of Owls, some of them lived for years and years and years. There was this mythology that Nightwing was supposed to be one of them, but Batman got to him first to take him to be Robin, and so there's a lot of really cool niche things in that comic book arc, and I really hope that they give it its just due, because Scott Snyder did an awesome job, and Greg Capullo, his art for Batman, while I don't necessarily think he's no Jim Lee or Jason Fabok in my opinion, or even I really liked Kubert's work on Batman as well. He's got such a distinct style. It kind of reminds me of some of the work that, say, Ed McGuinness did on Superman. It's not distinctly Superman iconic, but it's got such a distinct feel that you can't help but enjoy the art. Um, and so I hope that the style is similar to Capullo's art, and I hope that the storyline is more similar to the Quarterballs storyline than it is a mishmash with elements of that built into it. As far as the Gods and Monsters, I was going to cut you off, but I figured I'd let you finish talking. Bruce Timm, you're looking for a metaphor. He's the Steven Spielberg of DC animation. I mean, the guy has never had an unsuccessful turn at anything he's done. He's pumped out hit after hit after hit, and he's the godfather of DC animation. He can do no wrong, and I hope that he maintains that. It would be awesome if they decided to do a backdoor pilot into into an actual brand new animated film. But who knows? It would be very, very cool if they did that. I'm pretty excited just for the fact that he's doing some more DC animated stuff as far as who's going to be in it, as far as who's going to do, all of the voice acting and whatnot. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he brought back the classics, George Newbern for Superman, who's done a few turns as Superman, or Tim Daly, or obviously Conroy's Batman. As far as the Throne of Atlantis one, that's an awesome arc, and Aquaman has just been cutting a bloody swath of awesomeness through the DC universe since the New 52, kind of gave him a fresh revamp. And I'm really excited to see Throne of Atlantis come up, and they're going to have some of the people who have done the voice acting for the other films, the Justice League War film, as Eric mentioned, most of them. I really like pretty much everything that they've done, and as far as Jason O'Mara's Batman, it could be a little better, but it's when compared to Kevin Conroy, I mean, you're always going to fall a little bit short. So I can't hold that against him too much. As far as Jerry O'Connell, Superman, he did a good job, and Nathan Fillion obviously is Green Lantern in the flesh, so that's pretty good. I think Rosario Dawson's pretty good voice casting. As far as the rest of the cast, everyone's done a pretty good job on.
Oh, don't forget Sam Witwer as Ocean Master.
Yeah, Sam, I really like that too. Yeah, me and Eric, we met Sam Witwer a couple years back at Comic-Con, Motor City Comic-Con, and Sam Witwer's an awesome guy, really cool, nice guy, and he has a really cool, dark, distinct voice, so I think that's perfect for villain. It's really good for Ocean Master, especially the brother of Aquaman, so that's a pretty cool casting choice as well. But yeah, I'm always, as far as DC's animated lineup, they really haven't put out bad films. They put out some that are less spectacular, but it's not everything can be a 10. I mean, no one wants to admit, am I looking forward to Avengers 2? Yes. Do I think it's going to be absolutely as great as the first one? I hope so. Is it going to be better? That would be fantastic. But when you hit such a high quality in one respect, everything else is going to either A, fall short, or you're going to be reaching to get to that new height, making the next film just as good. And that's, if anyone has had that problem, the problem of maintaining excellence, it's been DC's animated film lineup. So I definitely think that they're going to do good. I really like the way that they're going forward with kind of some of their Justice League films. They're getting the Justice League into people's minds. I mean, even though they've been around since the Super Friends, hopefully we can get that out of people's minds and get awesome, serious comic bookness into the people's forefront of their thought before the Justice League movie comes out. But other than that, I don't have much to say. It looks like they're going to be cool, for lack of a better word to put it. I think it's about as much as I can say. But I was a little bit excited about a few more announcements at Comic-Con here and there, but nothing that's really falls under the purview of this show. Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi possibly writing a Evil Dead TV show. My head just exploded when I heard that. Pretty awesome, but What else? We're running up on the hour, so if we're going to talk about anything else, we need to talk about it and quick.
Yeah, of course, we just said we had to mention Arrow Season 3. Josh also wanted me to drop a note about The Flash. They put out a nice little teaser clip for those who haven't seen the pilot yet. Neither of us have, but there's a little teaser clip. You can view it. It's on our Facebook page, which we will talk about at the end of the show. Well, facebook.com/a-podcast for all seasons. Josh linked it up there, I believe, yesterday. I'm very psyched for The Flash. But Arrow Season 3, they had a panel for the show, I believe, Friday, and they showed a trailer, which I included in an article on Multiverse Entertainment yesterday. And my reaction to the trailer was pretty much just, holy shit. It's a trailer that's going to give you chills as an Arrow fan or a fan of DC in general. For about 1:10, they recap Season 2, and then they show new footage from Season 3, and we see former Superman Brandon Routh as Ray Palmer, who will eventually go on to become the Atom. We see Peter Stormare as the new Count Vertigo, and I've been a huge fan of that actor for a long time, so I'm very excited to see Stormare on the show. And we get a look at Roy Harper as Arsenal in full gear. His costume might even look more badass than the Green Arrows on the show. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I think you might be right.
Just, yeah, lots of great footage in that. It wasn't in the footage, but I think it was recently announced. I saw it linked on GreenArrowTV.com, I believe, which is an offshoot of Krypton's site, a Smallville site Josh and I have enjoyed for many years. That Ted Grant Wildcat will be on the show in Season 3. They're just, like, expanding the DC universe on the CW, like, even more than Smallville ever did. It's quite awesome to be a fan these days. And then, of course, Constantine looks to expand the Supernatural universe over on NBC with Supernatural DC universe, not to be confused with the TV show Supernatural. You know, they're hinting at Dr. Fate. You know, they're gonna bring in Jim Corrigan, the Spectre, eventually. Just awesome stuff. But to get back to Arrow, today I posted over on DarkKnightNews.com. It's pretty much the same trailer we posted on Multiverse Entertainment yesterday, but I put it up on Dark Knight News because Ra's al Ghul's at the end of it. And why did they not include him in the trailer that was shown at the panel on Friday? Why wait until Sunday morning with, you know, most of the same footage in there? Regardless, I watched it again, had chills for all the Season 3 scenes I had already, you know, seen teased. Like I said, I'm having a hard time finding words here. But Ra's himself, he was hinted at in Season 1, name dropped in Season 2. Of course, we had his daughter Nisa in the League of Assassins, and we kind of had a feeling he was going to be in Season 3. But yes, he's the big bad. You don't see his face in the trailer, which tells me they haven't cast him yet, or they have and they don't want to reveal him. It could easily be a double, but from what you can see from the neck down, he looks more close to the comic book iteration of the character than what we saw in Batman Begins. So considering Arrow is more willing to incorporate fantastical elements since Season 2 at least, I don't think we're going to see, you know, Chris Nolan's grounded take where, you know, there was just myth surrounding the guy in Parlor Tricks. I think it's very possible we could be seeing a guy that's 500-600 years old, or I think in the New 52 they've said he's even 1,000 years old in, you know, current continuity. But yeah, to see a villain of that magnitude coming to the show, it's okay. I'm turning over to you, Josh. I've run out of adjectives. Your thoughts on Arrow?
It's awesome. It's totally friggin' awesome, for lack of a long descriptor. Yeah, it's a sweet. It's essentially the same thing as like the Avengers 2 trailer. It's a sizzle reel. It's just all the hits. They show Roy in the Arsenal costume. It might be even slicker than the Green Arrow costume. I think maybe Green Arrow might have to revamp his costume. Otherwise he's going to get a little bit jealous. The Ra's al Ghul reveal at the end, they show an up close shot of his hand. He's got the demon's head ring. It's awesome looking. It's very, very cool. If they do what I think that they should, which is make it a little bit more mystical. I mean, if we can have Mirakuru making Slade Wilson's Deathstroke super powerful and being able to heal, and that's kind of on the border of science versus magic or mysticism. I don't see why we can't have a scientific explanation for why the Lazarus Pit works, right? I mean, we can do that. I think it would be very cool. But it's definitely looking pretty awesome. I'm very excited about that. I'm excited about quite a few other things, but yeah, Arrow has it hit the ground running in season 2. It looks like it's going to do the same thing in season 3. They're not slowing down that show at all. The fact that they are introducing so many more comic book characters is just going to make it all the more awesome. I like the fact that they're going to be able to do a few more characters like Wildcat. He's just a boxer. He's just a regular jamoke like Green Arrow. So it's completely plausible that they should be able to bring in a bunch of other characters like that without having to break too many of their own early set rules. But yeah, that's it. And check out the Flash trailer if you haven't. We posted it. It's just a cool little, Flash running like 760 miles per hour or something like that, blowing the windows out of a cop car. It's just a cool little, minute-long video. Lots of little Easter eggs in there as well. So check it out on our Facebook page. We posted it. Again, it's facebook.com/podcast for all seasons. Anything else you want to add, Eric? Any other non-adjectives?
No, we'll pretty much wrap it up for this week. We won't have time to get into verbal comic book reviews like we usually do. I did pick up a bit this week, but I do hope that folks got out for Batman Day. I certainly got a good amount of the promo items. I will say that the Free Detective 27, very well put together anthology issue for the price of nothing for people to pick up. Just very nice tribute to 75 years of the character. But if you want to read some recent reviews of mine, go over to darkknightnews.com. It's still one of the featured posts at the time of this recording. Damian, Son of Batman Deluxe Edition. I thought it was a decently good hardcover, well put together, so go give that a read. And over at comicbookmovie.com under the reviews, Afterlife with Archie #6, just probably the best issue to date. I gave it a 9.5. Maybe it deserved a 10, but yeah, just incredible stuff in that title. It had a 6-page preview for Sabrina #1. Never thought I'd be pumped for a Sabrina the Teenage Witch comic book, but it's a very serious horror book that they're pushing, and I didn't spoil how Afterlife with Archie's recent issue ended, but I told it to Josh, and he seemed kind of floored by it. You were like, shit's getting real in Archie books, but
it really is, folks.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah, definitely read everything Afterlife with Archie to this point. But yeah, my review's over at CBM. And I have another Archie book coming up that I'm reviewing. Hopefully I'll have that up on CBM early to midweek sometime, because I'm putting together a very special feature over at Dark Knight News that I want to get out the door first. But yeah, that's going to do it for me. Just as a reminder, visit our page at multiverseentertainment.wordpress.com. We will have the Wonder Woman photo as the featured image for this episode, just in case you didn't see it, in case it didn't show up in the video when Josh had it popped up. And if somehow if you've been living under a rock since yesterday afternoon, we'll have it regardless. And also on our WordPress page, I have a decently informative yet short article about the animated films we talked about. And then be sure, of course, to like us, as we said, at facebook.com/a podcast for all seasons. Hopefully, we'll be back next week with our review of Guardians of the Galaxy. And as we've said in the past, stay tuned for one or more special guests in the month of August. I'm out for this week. Thanks for listening.
Well, thanks for listening, guys. I won't let it go any longer than that. You guys have been patient. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next week, hopefully, with some awesome reviews. Have a good night.